Funding for Texas's public schools comes from three main sources: local school district property taxes, state funds, and federal funds. The majority of funding comes from local property taxes, which are collected by school districts, and state funding. The Foundation School Program is the state program that establishes the amount of state and local funding owed to school districts under Texas school finance law. After local property taxes are collected, the state contributes the remaining amount to reach the funding level determined necessary by TEA. The bilingual ESL allotment comes from Tier 1 of the operations funding component of the FSP. Here is an example of what a bilingual ESL budget code might look like. Fund Code 163 stands for State Bilingual. Function Code 11, Instruction. Object Code 5829, State Program Revenues distributed by TEA. The Local Subject Object Code. Organization Code 830 stands for Bilingual, ESL, and languages other than English. Fiscal Year Code 12 stands for the 2011-2012 school year, and Program Intent Code 25 stands for Bilingual Education and Special Language Programs. The bilingual ESL program in Texas is a state-mandated program. The Texas Education Code, Chapter 89.1201 states, "It is the policy of the state that every student in the state who has a home language other than English and who is identified as an English language learner shall be provided a full opportunity to participate in a bilingual education or ESL program, as required in the Texas Education Code, Chapter 29, Subchapter B. School districts are compensated for the additional expense of this program through an allotment in the state's Foundation School Program. There is also a federal grant program, often referred to as Title III, but officially called the English Language Acquisition, Language Enhancement, and Academic Achievement Act. This grant, which is part of the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, provides funds to help students who are identified as limited English proficient learn English while at the same time mastering state content area standards. These funds are significantly less than state funds, must be supplemental to what is required by state law, and supplemental to all other federal funds as well. Examples of possible uses for Title III grant money include supplemental staff to provide instructional support and modeling to bilingual ESL teachers, translation services, supplemental instructional materials and technology for the bilingual ESL program, staff development in the area of English language learners, English classes for parents, activities for students, parental involvement activities, and summer school activities. State funding from TEC Section 42.153, the Bilingual Education Allotment, states that funds allocated under this section, other than indirect cost allotment established under State Board of Education rule, must be used in providing bilingual education or special language programs under Subchapter B, Chapter 29, and must be accounted for under existing agency reporting and auditing procedures. A district's bilingual education or special language allocation may be used only for program and student evaluation, instructional materials and equipment, staff development, supplemental staff expenses, salary supplements for teachers, other supplies required for quality instruction, and smaller class size. There are many reasons why students participating in the bilingual ESL program require additional funding. First, there are personnel costs. Specialized teachers who supplement instruction provided by a mainstream teacher, and professional development to strengthen the skills of teachers working with LEP students. Then there is specialized staff development. Recent research indicates that almost 1 in 3 new teachers assigned to work in bilingual and ESL classes are not certified to teach in that area and require additional training. Then there are additional assessment costs for the test to determine who qualifies for bilingual ESL instruction and who's ready to exit the program. And also specialized instructional materials. Though the state incorporates some of these in the textbooks and supplementary materials as part of the textbook adoption process, local schools still need and use other consumable materials to deliver the specialized instruction needed for LEP students. Now let's take a look back at the history of the bilingual ESL program in Texas. Starting in 1975 with the adoption of HB 1126, the state of Texas allocated state funding to support bilingual ESL program implementation. The funding mechanism used provided for a per-pupil allocation of $25, multiplied by the number of students who were actually participating in the bilingual education or ESL program. In 1981, after the adoption of the state programs required by SB 477, the allocation was increased to $50 per LEP student identified and enrolled in the program. This very basic approach to bilingual and ESL program funding was continued until 1984 and the adoption of HB 72. That major overhaul of the Texas school finance system changed the way Texas funded programs for what came to be called special student populations, or students identified as having special learning-related needs. In this new funding system, the state moved from arbitrarily setting a per-pupil funding amount to an approach that assigned a weight to different special needs pupils, today commonly known as WADA. In HB 72, schools were provided additional funding in the state finance formula for LEP students who were enrolled in either a bilingual or ESL program. The weight assigned to bilingual education was then, and still is, 0.10. This weight is multiplied by the adjusted basic allotment for each school district to come up with add-on funding that is provided. Like practically all other parts of the state funding system, the actual amount that is provided in state funding is adjusted to account for local district property wealth. To calculate a district's bilingual ESL allotment, the district's adjusted allotment is multiplied by 0.10 and then multiplied by the number of bilingual ESL students in average daily attendance. For example, in the Birdville ISD this year, the legislative planning estimate for ADA in the bilingual program is 3,446. When that number is plugged into the formula, the LPE allotment for budgeting purposes is $1,763,748. Participation in a school's bilingual ESL program is documented through PEIMS, the Public Education Information Management System. Note that all LEP students are not required to participate in a special language program. So parents have the right to deny services, which means that a school would not qualify to receive a bilingual ESL allotment for that child, lowering its allocation from the state. Any expenditures made in conjunction with the bilingual ESL department must be documented using GAP guidelines. As previously stated, a district's bilingual education or special language allocation may be used for the reasons seen on your screen. Common budget codes used in conjunction with the bilingual ESL program include Fund Code 163, State Bilingual, Organization Code 830, Bilingual ESL and Languages Other than English, and Program Intent Code 25, Bilingual Education and Special Language Programs. The bilingual ESL program plays a significant role in comprehensive needs assessments and the district improvement plans because LEP students make up the majority of this program and are a recognized subpopulation that is evaluated in terms of average yearly progress. Districts are held accountable for the progress of LEP students through Annual Measurable Achievement Outcomes, or AMAOs, which is the number of LEP students making sufficient progress in English acquisition, attaining English proficiency, and AYP. If the LEP subpopulation meets minimum size requirements, but does not meet the performance standards set by TEA, it could put a school in danger of not meeting AYP. So addressing the language needs of LEP students should be addressed in any campus improvement plan. Because expenses for the bilingual ESL program can range from instructional materials to staff development, they are disguised in the annual budget under a variety of different expenditure function codes, including 11, Instruction, 12, Instructional Resources and Media, 13, Staff Development, 21, Instructional Administration. A detailed budget analysis with full budget codes would be needed to narrow down all expenses related to the bilingual ESL program. The bilingual ESL department's proposed budget is part of the overall district budget, which must be adopted no later than August 31st or June 30th if the district's fiscal year begins July 1st. As long as the department follows the allocation guidelines stated above, there is rarely any reason to question the program's budget, although it is susceptible to funding cutbacks, as is any other department. The only other reason for needing board approval is a budget amendment to move funds between function levels. Today, there are almost 832,000 English language learners participating in special language programs in Texas. This represents 17% of the current student population in the state and continues growing every year. And while 91% of these students speak Spanish as their second language, 120 other languages are represented in Texas schools. For that reason, it is important to recognize the value of the bilingual ESL program in Texas schools and continue its funding through local, state, and federal sources.